You're taking a look inside Kansas politics. Welcome in. I'm Rebecca Chung. Today we have a wrap up of the biggest topics at the State House this week. Two political experts are weighing in. We have our very own political analyst Bob Beatty and political science professor and author Michael Smith. All right, Bob, Michael, let's start with a look at election laws. Several committee hearings took place at the State House this week, some bills also mirroring what we've seen in the past, but others not so much. So here's the full list. We have the bill numbers up for you now. We can pull them up. HB 2504 is first. It's dealing with paper ballots, and that requires that only physical paper ballots be reviewed when conducting election audits. Now, SB 343, that's mail-in ballot requests, bans the mailing of advance voting ballot applications to voters unless by a county election official pursuant to a request by the voter. So request is the key word here. HB 2512, advanced ballot deadline. This requires advance voting ballots cast in person to be received by the county election office by 7 p.m. on the second day preceding the election. So it sounds like 2 days before the election. Then HB 2516, independent candidate signatures, raises the number of signatures required for nomination petitions for independent candidates for statewide office and eliminates the option for such candidates to pay a filing fee in lieu of such petitions. So Bob, Michael, all of these could have a big impact on how elections are run, but which one stands out to you and what could happen during the upcoming election?
Well, Rebecca, this is a lot. So let's start by reminding viewers that it has been studied intensely by election experts, and there is no widespread voter fraud in the United States, and there wasn't any in the 2020 presidential election in any state, including Kansas. That said, in terms of these laws, some of them, many voters may not notice if the voters vote absentee or early vote well in advance of the election, or if they stand in line to vote on election day, they may not actually even notice these changes. Change in and of itself could be confusing for people because, for example, if someone is accustomed to dropping off their advance ballot the day before the election, this bill would mean that that ballot would not be accepted or counted. Or even dropping it off on election day. So just changing election laws in and of itself can confuse voters. It's not that the new law is necessarily bad, it's the change, because the voter may not be expecting the change, and most people don't research voting laws in depth before they go to vote. The independent candidates piece is interesting. I think it's directed at independent candidates that may cost Republicans vote. Such as happened in the gubernatorial election recently, with the Dennis Pyle candidacy, possibly costing Derek Schmidt that. And then on the paper ballots, Rebecca, I'm a supporter of paper ballots. I particularly like touchscreen machines where you can vote on the touchscreen and then they print a paper ballot. The voter can inspect it, make sure that it printed out correctly, and then cast it. It can be recounted by machine and it can be recounted by hand. But this is a funny one, this bill, because it's about audits. That's not what I would have done. What I would have done is take some of that state surplus money, just a little piece, and given grants to the counties to update their machines to touchscreen machines that print paper ballots, such as Lyon County has done.
Interesting. And Bob, anything you wanted to add on there?
Well, yeah, Michael said the premise, talked about the premise, so I want to step back as well. Some of the viewers may know that I spent a lot of time in Iowa. I saw Donald Trump, Vivek Ramaswamy. Both of them said they wanted election day voting only, paper ballots. So from the Republican Party, at least, there's this drive to not have mail-in ballots, to not have advance voting, to limit all voting to literally you show up on election day. And so I think, Kansas being a Republican state, like other Republican states, we're seeing this, as Michael said, sort of a chipping away at maybe making incremental steps toward that, which we've seen every session. And it's really about the definition of democracy. The people that are talking about this saying we're defending democracy, yes. On the other hand, democracy is also participation. So with these bills, I'd like to see some other bills that talk about how to increase voter registration, how to get, make sure young people know that they can now register to vote. I'm not seeing those yet. I think I personally would like to see some of that if we're going to do things that might limit voting.
Right, and then you also have to wonder, how likely is it for these bills to gain enough support to pass and then override a veto if it comes down?
One of the issues we need to remind everybody of is that it's an election year. And so that means every piece of legislation has a dual purpose. Right? It may be that it's intended to become law, to become public policy. It may be that it's about gunning for the next election. And with these bills, it isn't clear to me, why are they being proposed separately? Why not an omnibus bill? Will they be amended? Will there be compromises? Because again, we have a major candidate for U.S. president that continues to insist without evidence that they were denied the U.S. presidency because of voter fraud. And I can't help but think that that's really what's driving a lot of this. And those claims are false.
All right, and Bob, do you have a similar view?
Well, yes, I think Governor Kelly could very easily veto several of these, especially if they involve drop boxes, because she's done that in the past. And so it's also interesting to raise the signature limit. We could call this the Dennis Pyle bill, because Dennis Pyle
Yes.
ran in the gubernatorial race, and he's actually cited by some of the people talking about this bill in the legislature. We've seen this in the past, where bills come out when somebody loses and others think, well, we can change the rules. But that's, of course, you could argue, again, it's your definition of democracy. They're arguing we want our governor to have 50%, but so let's limit the number of candidates, that can be on the ballot. Well, others would say that's not very democratic. So it sure looks like it's a response to Dennis Pyle, who they argue took some votes from Derek Schmidt, which we don't know if that really happened. It's very possible he still would have got that amount. But, I think it's very possible the governor might veto that too.
All right, Bob, Michael, thank you. We'll have to see what comes out of committee this year. When we come back, it's at the top of everyone's minds heading into the election season. Tax cuts. With two opposing plans at the State House, whose will come out on top? Or will Kansans once again be left without major tax relief this year? We'll be right back. You're watching Inside Kansas Politics.
Winter's first snowfall. It's a magical time. The kids are dressed and ready to play. In the living room. Those leaky vinyl windows were a great deal, though. At Renewal by Andersen, every replacement window we install is custom sized and precision manufactured to fit your home. That means a perfect fit every time. Kick those cheap, leaky windows to the curb. Visit our website to claim this month's great offer and schedule your free consultation.
Change the way you live by changing the way you sleep. It's the New Year's celebration of it now at the Mattress Hub. Relax in luxury with free adjustable bases, free delivery, and our famous 1-year comfort guarantee. Hurry in and save up to 50% off, only at the Mattress Hub.
Here at Performance Tire and Auto, we're more than tires, we're family. And because of that, we know how important it is to you to keep your family safe. For over 75 years, we've been a trusted name in automotive service, tires, and wheels in Topeka. You can always find us at either of our two locations, 1735 North Kansas Avenue or 17th and Topeka Boulevard. So stop in today and let our family keep your family on the road.
The story of Grace Med has always been told through its people, both those who serve and those who it is our honor to serve. We meet at the intersection of compassion and vulnerability, bringing health where there was illness and hope where there was despair. Our patients come to us bearing the weight of living in the margins, and we share the love of Jesus Christ with them by providing compassionate quality health care for all their physical, emotional, and spiritual needs. Because health restored is always hope renewed. Find hope today by scheduling an appointment with Grace Med.
Monday it's
an all-new Kelly!
Yeah! With Kevin James. And from Zorro, Renata Noti. I'm such a foodie person. Do you like pizza?
Look at me and ask that question again.
Monday at 3 on 27 KSNT.
Welcome back to Inside Kansas Politics. I'm Rebecca Chung. Next up on our list of the top State House topics this week, tax reform. Now, Bob, Michael, Republicans are looking at a single rate income tax, or flat tax, as some call it. It's a key feature in their tax package this year. If it goes into effect, income in excess of $12,300 for married individuals and in excess of $6,150 for others would be taxed at 5.25%. Remember that number. The tax package also features some aspects of Kansas Governor Laura Kelly's tax plan. That includes speeding up the elimination of the state food sales tax, and it would also eliminate the state tax on Social Security. But this flat tax is getting a lot of pushback from Democrats and also some Republicans. So, Bob, let's start with you. We see the governor's strategy here. She siphoned some votes from the Republican side, making it difficult for them to get the votes they need to override. But in the end, who could come out on top?
Well, great question. The Republicans have supermajorities, meaning if they get, all or most of their Republicans in line, they can override vetoes, and we saw that happen last year, but they weren't able to override Governor Kelly's veto of the flat tax. And in the interim, she's picked up a couple disaffected Republicans, and this is American politics. Some Republicans have irritated the Republican leadership in the Kansas legislature over not this issue, but some other issues, and they had enough. One we've already mentioned, Dennis Pyle, actually ran as an independent against Governor Kelly, but of course he also ran against Derek Schmidt, the Republican. He is part of that group now with Governor Kelly. So it's going to be close. It's a very close thing, but tentatively, it looks like the governor might be able to sustain a veto override in the Kansas Senate. So there's going to be some unbelievable arm twisting, even Michael and Rebecca, of Democrats, because we had a House member last year, a Democrat, who went against the governor. So it's not impossible for a Democrat to go against the governor, and there's a lot of incentives for politicians to vote certain ways. I'm not saying they do anything illegal. It's called log rolling, right, Michael? It's not bribery.
Process, yeah.
And so good things can happen sometimes. If you go along to get along.
And as I've said on this show before, Rebecca, the state has a surplus now, but someday that money is going to run out. And I think that, and the flat rate itself, just on principle, she objects to it, is the governor's objection. Sure, I'm sure she's grateful they put her ideas in the bill, but that extra 0.1% is not going to offset. And that means a bigger drain on that surplus. And someday that surplus is going to run out.
But let's also look at arguments on both sides, because you have Republicans saying state tax structure needs to change, right? Okay, so it needs to, go to this lower rate, and that would potentially, bring in some high-income earners. Could that offset the deficits that Democrats are accounting for? And historically, when we look at deficits, is that historically true that we've seen even with something that's a minor cut like this, because they've likened it to Sam Brownback's tax experiment, but this is not as grand. So tell me, historically, what have we seen in this particular arena?
Well, yeah, first of all, to Michael's point, the differences in the plans. Governor Kelly's is estimated to cost over 3 years $1 billion. When you add the flat tax, that's now $1.6 billion. And yeah, it's easy to say those numbers, so let me say $600 million. That's a big difference. So that's how much the state would have to gain by doing it, $600 million. Now, the governor mentioned the state of Arizona, and the state of Arizona kind of went all in on some currently very popular policies, more from the Republican side than the Democratic side, and that is the flat tax and school vouchers. And so in Arizona, they went from hundreds of millions in surplus to now a $400 million deficit. Boom, goes the dynamite quickly. And the reason Governor Kelly cites Sam Brownback is, I think, not necessarily the same type of policies, but how quickly the state can go into the tank with a massive tax cut. I think that's more the point. And so, ironically, Michael's going to get a kick out of this because we're a little bit older. Back in the old days, it was the Democrats that were saying, oh, they love to spend money and everything. And it was the Republicans that were supposed to be very conservative with money. Sure. Ironically, Governor Kelly here is just being very cautious. She's like, I don't want to break the bank. We have a surplus. And you got the Republicans saying, oh, what's another $600 million?
That's right.
So we're still I'm a little bit in shock still that it turns that way.
That philosophy, Rebecca, that tax cuts generate economic growth is based on if you start with a high tax rate. Back in the 1960s, President Kennedy signed a tax cut that took the effective top tax rate from about 90% to about 70%. And it did pay for itself with economic growth. State income taxes aren't high enough to do that. And that's one of the reasons why the Brownback experiment, which was never fully implemented, cratered. What can happen is that you get border effects, and then there's a race to the bottom with states trying to outcut each other, and they don't have enough revenue to fund services.
Coming up next, anti-abortion activists are making a new push this year. Their plan for 2024, plus which new bills are in front of Kansas lawmakers. We'll be right back. You're watching Inside Kansas Politics.
When people hire an attorney, they're looking for peace of mind. They're wanting to hire somebody that is professional, acts with integrity, yet is very aggressive against the insurance company.
The goal of Devon James is to help any individuals who've been involved in a collision to help put their life back together.
We have some of the best attorneys in the state, and we will fight our very best to get every penny that our clients deserve.
You don't pay until we win your case. And it's a great feeling to know that we've protected our clients.
Oh, there's something so real about living local. And I know without a doubt I'm not alone. And I'm loving living local. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. KSNT is living local. It's the only kind of air I want to breathe. Northeast Kansas is where I love to be.
Bring it to these boys.
Get ready for the NFC Championship game on Fox.
Let's go!
Jared Goff has the Lions one win away from their first ever Super Bowl appearance.
Oh my goodness!
Now, they'll take on Christian McCaffrey and the top-seeded Niners.
We win, we in, baby. We win, we in.
Lions, Niners, the NFC Championship, tonight on Fox.
For the best coverage of high school basketball in Northeast Kansas, join Glenn Kinley and Lainey Gerber for Full Court Press. Friday nights at 10 on 27 News.
Monday on the #1 entertainment talk show, Bryan Cranston and Nikolai Coster-Waldau.
Monday at 11 on 27 KSNT.
Welcome back to Inside Kansas Politics. I'm Rebecca Chung. The abortion issue is making a return to the Kansas State House with a continued push from anti-abortion activists. They laid out their top priorities during the annual March for Life. A large crowd marched to the south side of the Capitol steps, and several Republican lawmakers were also in tow. This year, they say they're backing several restrictions for the abortion industry. Here are just some of what they mentioned.
We seek to establish tax credits to assist those who want to adopt, encourage donations to pregnancy resource centers, and provide financial relief for families with children.
Now, here are some of the bills that are already on the table this year. 5 Republicans introduced a near total abortion ban earlier this month. It would only make exceptions to save the life of the mother. Another bill would make changes to the state's Born Alive law. It would allow patients to sue a provider for any injuries due to a failed abortion. There's also a bill that would bar some clinics from getting liability insurance from the state. Now, Bob, Michael, we continue to see this push at the State House, even after the vote to uphold abortion rights, and keep in mind the potential for court battles. Why do you think that is?
Well, some of it is a sincere belief by some individuals that they don't care what the courts say. They want to criminalize abortion. It's probably not electoral unless possibly it's for the Republican primary, because we know from the 2022 vote that being anti-abortion is not a winner, at least statewide in Kansas. Some of it is kind of ticky-tack. It reminds me of something the writer Barbara Shelley used to write for the Star, now writes for the Pitch, wrote about the Missouri General Assembly years ago when she wrote that they spend their time thinking up ways to harass Planned Parenthood. And that liability bill really reminds me of that, just sort of antagonizing abortion clinics in various ways. It's not going to shut them down. It's just going to antagonize them. And that Born Alive thing, there's no evidence that that type of abortion is performed in the state of Kansas, so that is for public relations purposes.
Right, but you also have to wonder, should the abortion industry have more restrictions than it currently does? Should there be limits, right? And that's, I think, what the argument is for some of these anti-abortion activists. They're looking at placing limits on the abortion industry. Is that a valid attempt, or is this really impeding how abortion clinics are operating? Bob.
Well, before Roe v. Wade was overturned, this was every session, Kansas would pass several bills that would put limits or concerning regulations on abortions. I mean, there was bills concerning the what had to be said before an abortion. There was what could be called a clinic. I mean, there were scores and scores of regulations passed, and Roe v. Wade was overturned, and we all know that a number of anti-abortion activists were just very pleased, which of course, this is something they had dreamed about. And then two things happened. It went to the states, and of course, Kansas voters said, you know, they did not want the legislature to take away the right to an abortion, essentially. So now it's interesting that they're looking at regulations, but what I noticed in some of their proposals was really interesting, which is tax credits and money and programs involving alternatives to abortion or counseling for people, you know, thinking of abortion. And this is a little different than regulations. So traditionally, yes, regulations, but this is looking at the legislature and the anti-abortion legislators and saying, we want some money. And so we can attack this problem as we see it. And the problem as they see it is not just abortion, it's that Kansas becoming now a place for people to come from other states to get abortions, which increased in the last year quite a bit.
All right, Bob, Michael, thank you. The question coming up next, will 2024 be the year for marijuana? We'll be right back. You're watching Inside Kansas Politics.
Brown's Tree Service does it all, from bushes to commercial clearing. We're a second-generation family-owned business that's been serving Northeast Kansas for over 50 years. Our robotic equipment is operated remotely, making the job safer and faster. We can easily maneuver tight spots. Our certified arborists will help keep your trees in tip-top shape. We'll protect them from disease and insects. Our large crew is insured and licensed. We're scheduling now. Contact Brown's Tree Service today.
You never know what's going to happen next. You got this!
AGT Fantasy League, Monday on NBC and Peacock.
You're worried there's a crime here? Could be arson then.
It could also be homicide.
We are so close.
By the time I leave here, it'll be like I waved a magic wand.
The Irrational, new Monday on NBC and Peacock.
Change the way you live by changing the way you sleep. It's the New Year's celebration of it now at the Mattress Hub. Save up to 50% off on the best brands in sleep, including these huge doorbuster deals. Hurry in and save up to 50% off, only at the Mattress Hub.
Today on CW Women's Hoops.
50 baseline move.
Senior Alyssa Usby leads number 20 North Carolina in a clash with Kamora Johnson and Virginia.
You want to talk about money? Man, what a ball game.
CW Women's Hoops. Number 20 North Carolina versus Virginia. Today at 12 Eastern, 9 Pacific.
This is Entertainment Tonight. This is the Bible of show business.
Weeknights at 6:30.
Welcome back to Inside Kansas Politics. I'm Rebecca Chung. It's top of mind for some Democrats, but Republicans say it's a non-starter. Bob, Michael, we're talking about marijuana. We asked Kansas House Speaker Dan Hawkins about the issue, and he says it's in the Senate's hands. Then Senate President Ty Masterson, though, he says it's not a priority this year. That's even though some independent polls show a large number of Kansans calling for legalization. Bob.
Yeah, this is a case where the Republican leadership, you just mentioned them, has been pretty forthright in saying they absolutely have no interest in this. And it's almost a point of principle with them, it seems like. that darn it, Kansas will be the last state in the union, and we will not have marijuana, medical or recreational. And yeah, polls show it, but if the people don't, if the voters don't, ask and vote on the issue, no one's going to change their mind, and it's a Republican majority. And so Kansas is, in terms of medical marijuana especially, like Medicaid expansion, now one of the few states that no longer has it. It's been particularly interesting because the Senate President, Ty Masterson, he seems really adamant about it. Yeah. And even last year, made a joke about somebody needing or wanting medical marijuana who was dying after the governor cited that person in her speech. So this is not an issue I can see Ty Masterson wanting to spend any time on.
All right,
I agree. I've said it before, I'll say it again, border effects, border effects, border effects. Recreational marijuana is legal in Colorado and Missouri. Medical marijuana is legal in those states and Nebraska and Oklahoma. There are drive-through marijuana dispensaries on the east side of State Line Road in Kansas City. State and local governments in Missouri are getting revenue from the sale of marijuana. And I don't think Masterson's going to budge. I agree with you, Bob. He's not going to budge.
Now, moving on to school choice, or vouchers, as some Democrats call it, it's another issue that could fall flat this year. Here's what Speaker Hawkins told me when I asked him what we can expect on the House side.
I'm not going to, I got 65 votes last year. And, with this governor, you have to have 84. I don't have 84 for that, so I'm probably not going to spend a whole lot of time with that.
Now, possibly he may run it if it comes down to it, but it looks like that's not where all the focus is going this year. Michael, he makes a good point. How will supporters of this sort of legislation come up with the votes?
I don't think they can, and one of the main problems here is that there are no private schools in a lot of rural counties. And this is really an urban bill. Even in a town like Emporia, which is bigger than many in Kansas, there are only a couple of private schools and they have waiting lists. It's a Johnson County, Wichita, Topeka bill. And these conservative Republicans from rural areas that might be ideologically sympathetic, they have no constituency motivation to get behind this because all it does is defund the school-based funding formula, which hurts their schools.
All right, thank you both. And that was your look inside Kansas politics. If you want to keep up to date on all things Kansas politics, then follow us on social media. Follow us on X at NKS Politics and on Facebook, just search Inside Kansas Politics. We'll also post the full video on YouTube, just search KSNT News. And check ksnt.com/inside-kansas-politics for past episodes. If you have a story you want Kansas state legislators to hear or topics you think we should cover, let us know. You can email us at ikp@ksnt.com. We'll see you right here, same time, same place. Have a good day.